I'm back with more crochet hacks. Hack number 1. This is for when you start a new project and you want to take a break from it. You will never again have to worry about forgetting what size crochet hook you were doing. No, you don't need any of the little clips or markers. You're going to use something you probably already have sitting right next to you. Whenever you start a new project and you want to take a break from it, before you set it down, grab your phone, take a picture of the hook with the project, and make sure you can see what hook size you're using. Then take that picture and put it into an album called Crochet Projects. And now when you go to pick this project back up, if the hook is missing, you just check your Crochet Projects photo album to know exactly what hook size you were using. Hello there crafters, it is Amanda and I am back with more crochet hacks. I'm really excited about today's video. Hopefully you liked the first hack so far, and I've got 4 more hacks in this video for y'all. I want to say thank y'all so much for the love and support you have shown to one of my other hack videos. You guys got that video to 1 million views. That's just absolutely crazy to me. I am so thankful for all of y'all, and I thought, you know what, since it reached 1 million views, y'all probably want some more crochet hacks. So let's go to hack number 2. I came across this one on Instagram a while back. I really wish I remember what account I saw this on, but it's a way to create very straight edges when you're working a single crochet stitch. If you liked my alternative turning chain hack, I think you're really gonna like this one because it's kind of like the single crochet equivalent to get really straight edges when you're working with single crochet. So I've worked up 2 swatches here to illustrate the impact of the hack. Now, if you look at these, it's a very subtle difference. We're looking at the edges of our work. The blue is without the hack. This is working normal rows of single crochet. You have a chain 1, turning chain, all that jazz. Honestly, it looks pretty good. This is the version of the hack, and I want you to pay attention to just how straight and crisp these edges are. And if we compare them side by side, you'll notice that the green has these really crisp edges, whereas the blue has a little bit more of a bump to it. This is one of those things where it's a subtle difference, and this hack isn't so much that I don't like the way this looks, and it's more that I love the way this looks. So over here, we have these little bumps kind of along the side, and that's from the turning chain. Little bumps along this side too, whereas these edges are really straight and crisp. Let me show you how to get that look. So this hack works with single crochet, so I'm going to start by chaining 1, turning my work, and work a single crochet in every stitch of my row. The magic's going to happen at the end of this row. So the point at which we use this hack is in the very last stitch of the row. Now normally what we would do is, this is the last stitch, we see that little V, we would insert underneath both loops the top of that stitch. To make the hack work, after we insert through those 2 loops, this little nub right here on the side, we're going to also go underneath it. So I'm going to come kind of right to left. It might be a little tight, but we'll just slide it on there. And that's the little nub from the turning chain. So I've gone under the stitch as well as this little nub on the side. And now I'm going to work my single crochet stitch like normal. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And it creates that really crisp edge. Let me work another row and show it to you one more time. I have 1 more stitch to work in this row. So to work the hack, I'm going to insert into the top of the stitch like normal, and then also go underneath this little loop here on the edge. So insert my hook like normal. So going underneath those 2 little loops, so that V at the top of the stitch, and then also going to insert my hook under this loop here. Again, this can be a little tight. I tend to kind of grab it with my finger and pull it on, or use my fingernail to ease it on there. Right underneath that loop there, just trying to show you guys really slowly without blocking it entirely with my thumb. Once you're under that loop, complete your single crochet like normal by yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, and pulling through 2. Again, look at how nice and crisp that edge is. And what this does is it pulls that little nub kind of up, so that way it's not sticking out, creating the little bump on the side. As an example of when this hack comes in handy is if you're working on something like this wall hanging I made here. I am going to be working on getting the pattern posted to my Etsy store, but it's worked with single crochet and bobble stitches, and I wanted this to have a really crisp finished look since it's a wall hanging. You look along the edge here, all these single crochets, I did the hack that I showed, and look at how nice and crisp that edge is. Same on the other side, it looks so smooth. And for a project like this where I really want to see the good definition of the bobble stitches, I don't want anyone to be distracted by a little bit of bumping on the edge. Again, this hack is a very subtle difference, and it's not a matter of not liking this look, it's a matter of really loving this look. Crochet hack number 3. This is a way to turn one strand of yarn into a 3-strand thickness. What do I mean by that? Basically, it's a way to take yarn and make it into bulky yarn by tripling up on the amount of yarn you're using. Now, I had a project that I made years back where I needed to make the yarn bulky by using 3 strands of yarn. So I worked with 3 things of yarn all at once, super tangled, super messy. This hack is gonna solve that problem for you. To turn this single strand of medium weight 4 yarn into a 3-ply bulky kind of yarn, we're going to start by tripling up our yarn. So I'm just gonna make a little zigzag. So I've got 3 layers of yarn here. I personally like to make this really long just because it makes the next step a little bit easier. I'm gonna hold all 3 of these together as if it's one strand of yarn. Now I'm going to come kind of towards the right hand side and treat this as if this is my tail of yarn. And I'm gonna make a slip knot like normal with all 3 thickness, so all 3 strands. And then I'm gonna put my hook through these 3 loops, and if I pull on the left hand side, I can stitch it down like normal. And now I'm gonna start crocheting with these 3 strands. You might notice this one is a loop. That'll be important in just a minute. So I'm gonna start off with making some chain stitches. Also, as a quick note, since we are making it into bulky yarn, grab a big hook. I'm using a 9mm for this 3-ply worsted weight yarn. So I'm going to start working along until I get to where this loop is, where I'm about to run out. To continue making it 3-ply, I'm going to pull my single strand of yarn through the loop, and I'm just going to pull it really long, and we'll have this little funky little spot there. But then if we go along, it'll be 3-ply that we've essentially created with a loop at the end. So now if I go back to where I'm crocheting, I'm just going to keep on working my chain stitches with this 3-ply yarn. So now I'm going to start working a row of double crochet, treating these 3 strands, holding them all together as if they are one. And then as I work along, when I get to that loop, I will pause and triple my yarn up again. Okay, so I'm almost to the loop. The loop's about to run away. I'm just going to take the single piece and pull it on up through the loop. Again, I like to pull this really long because the longer you pull it, the less amount of times you have to pull the loops through each other. But then I will hold this all together, treat it like one strand of yarn, and get back to double crocheting right along. Working with all 3 strands. And that's all there is to it. Every time you get to that loop, you just pull the single strand of yarn through the loop to make it be 3-ply again. Another thing I'll mention, if you're having a hard time pulling the single strand through the loop, you can use your hook to help yourself out. Just put the hook through the loop, yarn over and pull up that loop, and then of course take it off the hook and pull it on through like that. So if you're having a hard time, like maybe you work too far and this loop is really little, you can always use the hook to help yourself grab it. Now, the one thing with this hack that did concern me was how well does it unravel? I'll link to a video where I explain more about that sweater I made with 3-ply, and it was an absolute bear to unravel. So this obviously is a lot easier to work with than having 3 balls getting all tangled, but does it also unravel more easily? Fortunately, the answer is yes. So the way to unravel is you're gonna pull all 3 strands to unravel, and pull all 3 strands until you reach one of those points where you have a loop. Once you hit that point, you are going to want to take your single strand and pull that. And what that's going to do is that's going to undo those 2 loops. So again, pull on all 3 until I get to a spot where we looped it. So right here, take the single strand still connected to my ball of yarn and undo that because that's going to undo this loop here. And you probably want to pause and undo each loop because if you keep pulling all 3 strands but never pause to undo the loops, it's probably going to get pretty tangled. But fortunately, it's not too bad if you just undo it, get to the point where you have the loop, pull the single strand, it unravels very smoothly. But again, I wouldn't just undo all 3. I would make sure you're also undoing those loops every time you reach them to minimize how much yarn tangle you end up with. Hack number 4. Now this one, I think I might actually be the creator of this hack, or at least I figured out on my own. I've never seen anybody do this. This is for when you're working a project and you accidentally miss a stitch, specifically when you accidentally miss a single crochet stitch. This hack is a way to fill in that stitch without unraveling your work back to the point where you missed a stitch. Would you believe me if I told you that on this project I missed a stitch and filled it back in? Can you spot where it's at? I'll show you the other side. Now, if you know what to look for, yes, you can find it, but odds are you probably didn't pick up on it, although if you did pick up on it, you're a lot more observant than I am, so kudos to you. But it blends in really well. Right here, I missed a stitch on this row, and when I was working this row, I was able to fill it in. Here's what it looks like from the back. You might be able to notice it just a little bit now that I've pointed it out. But if I hadn't pointed it out, odds are you probably never would have noticed. Let me show you when and how to work this hack. So if I'm working on this project, I'm working single crochet and oops, I missed that stitch as I'm working this row. So missed that guy right there. Well, odds are if I missed it, I'm not going to notice it until I'm working the next row and go, wait a minute, I'm short some stitches. With this hack, we're going to fill in that gap on this next row. So I'm going to work single crochet in each of my stitches that I've already got until I get up to the point where I missed a stitch in the previous row. Sometimes it can be a little hard to tell, especially when we turn our work, but if we look right here, you can kind of see that V shape at the top of the stitch, so the V running like that. That's our missed stitch. So I've got one more stitch right here to work. And if I just keep working along, I'm going to be short one stitch. Now I could stick an extra stitch in the same spot and keep going on this row, but you tend to get kind of a hole there because it pulls the top of that stitch open more. So what we're going to do instead is once I've worked in the stitch right before where I missed the stitch, we're going to work, I'm going to call it a funky double crochet. It might look a little confusing at first, but stick with me, you'll be able to get the hang of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the top of the stitch that was missed, and I'm going to insert my hook right through here, right above it. So that's the stitch I missed. I'm going to insert my hook through my work right above it. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Now I'm going to insert through the top of the stitch that I missed. So again, if we kind of look here, there's that V shape. I'm going to go through the top of that stitch from the previous row, the back side, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So now I have 3 loops on my hook. Now this part's kind of goofy just because it can be tricky to figure out where to go with your hook. But when we pulled up this first loop, we want to insert our hook through that same spot. It's going to be right there. So this is the stitch we're filling in. You can see this spot right here where we pulled this loop up. I'm going to go through right there. The gist of it is we're inserting our hook not through the top. We're kind of down in the fabric. So insert my hook, yarn over, and when I pull it through, I'm going to pull it through these 2 loops here on my hook. So pull that through like so. Now I'll have 2 loops on my hook. Next, I'm going to insert my stitch in the same stitch where I worked the previous single crochet. So through that guy right there, I'm going to kind of come along the back side here, insert my hook right through there, yarn over, and pull through everything on my hook. So through that stitch, and then through the 2 loops on my hook. That's how we fill it in. I know that probably seemed like a lot. Don't worry, I'm going to show it to you again. And then from here, I can start working evenly again. So I'll go to my next stitch, work a single crochet, and put a single crochet in all the stitches going down the row. Now at first it might look really noticeable, but once you work another row above this, it's going to start blending in more and more. Also kind of squish it down a little bit and that'll blend in really nicely. But let me show that to you again because there are several steps to it. It can be a little tricky getting the hang of where to insert your hook, but I absolutely promise you it's worth it. And it's kind of like working a double crochet, just we're inserting our hook into all kinds of goofy places. Also this time it'll probably be a little easier to see now that these stitches have been stretched out. So this is my stitch right before I missed a stitch, so I'm just going to put a single crochet into that spot. Now to work the fill-in double crochet, funky double crochet, whatever we want to call this hack. I'm going to find where I missed the stitch and I'm going to insert my hook through the fabric right above the stitch. We're not going into the stitch, we're going right above it. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Now we're going to insert into the top of the stitch that was missed. So insert, go to the back of the fabric, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Now we're essentially going to yarn over and pull through these two, but we don't want to yarn over atop the fabric. We've got to insert our hook back through the fabric again. So I'm going to insert my hook in the same spot where we pulled this loop up, which is above the stitch that we missed. So right about there. If you don't get this spot exactly, it's going to be totally okay. Once I'm through the fabric, yarn over, pull that loop on to the front, and then pull this loop through the next two loops. So 1 and 2. Now I'll have just 2 loops on my hook. Before I yarn over to finish this stitch, I'm going to insert in the same spot where we worked the previous single crochet. So it's right there on the top row. Once I've inserted, I'm going to yarn over and pull through everything that is on my hook. And that's going to complete the fill-in stitch. To continue working down the row, this is my next spot to work. Put a single crochet in there and keep working on down. Once you get the hang of this stitch, you'll be able to work it a little tighter and snugger. Right now it's sticking out a bit because I worked it really loosely to illustrate it. But if you can get the hang of it, it's such a great and helpful way to fill in gaps. Now with a project like this, if I was on this row and realized I missed a stitch, I would just unravel. So this isn't really applicable for a small project, but let's say I'm doing a blanket where I have really wide rows back and forth. If I find I skipped a stitch in the previous row, that could be a lot of stitches to unravel, and I might not feel like unraveling. So this is a way to keep going and reset my stitch count and just get everything to blend in better and visually look right. Do keep in mind that the row where you have one less stitch can be a little bit narrower, pulled in just a little bit. But again, if this is a large project, missing that one stitch isn't going to pull it in so much that it's really noticeable. This hack also works in the round. I do find it a little more obvious in the round. If you couldn't find it, this right here is where we worked that stitch. But again, when you're working in the round, like say you're putting a border on a baby blanket, that could be a lot of stitches you'd have to unravel to get back to where you missed the stitch. So this can be a great option to avoid unraveling. I actually had this exact problem on a baby blanket recently. I did not want to unravel the border because it was a lot of stitches, so I used this hack to fill in the gap. Now visually it does look a little bit different when we're working in the round because we're not turning, so I am going to show you the hack one time when we're working in the round. And we've changed yarn color because I filmed this section, unraveled my hot pink swatch, and then realized my mic was not on, so we're refilming this. So if we look at the project, this right here is the stitch 2 rows down that we missed. So in the previous round, I have one more stitch, so I'm going to put a single crochet right through there. And now we're going to do the fancy little fill-in stitch. So same steps as before, it just looks a little different because all the stitches are worked in the same direction versus rows. So I'm going to start by finding the stitch 2 rows down that I missed working in, and I'm going to go right above it. So it's this spot right here. And again, if you don't go to the exact correct spot, it's still going to work out pretty good. Yarn over and pull that loop through the fabric. So you can see it's running right above the stitch that was missed. Now we're going to insert through the fabric in the top of the stitch that was missed. So right through there, out the back side, yarn over and pull a loop to the front. So I've got 3 loops on my hook. Now we're going to pull a loop through the fabric and through these 2 loops, but we've got to go through the fabric in the same spot where we pulled up this loop, which is right above the stitch. So just to illustrate, we're going to insert a hook through right here. Once I actually start moving the hook around, it's a little hard to see, but that's the spot right there where we're going to insert the hook. So just kind of twisting it up right through there, go through, yarn over. I'm going to pull that loop through the fabric and through the next 2 loops on my hook. Now we are almost done. To finish this off, I'm going to look at the stitch in the current row, that previous single crochet, and I'm going to insert through the top of that stitch. So I'm going to kind of look from the top, and we're going to insert our stitch through right here. Again, it's a little goofy just because the stitches are all kind of twisted together. That's okay. Once I'm through the top of that stitch, I'm going to yarn over, pull that loop through the fabric, and then pull it through the last 2 loops on my hook. And that works that fill-in stitch. So then to keep working on down, I'm going to put a single crochet in each of the next stitches and get back to working like normal. As a quick note, it looks really obvious right now and this loop is pulled really big. That's because I was keeping a lot of slack just for the sake of illustrating this and making it clear on camera. As you get the hang of it, you'll be able to pull that loop a little snugger and tighter, so it'll look more like that and not quite so, you know, the yarn split here and stuff. So it looks really obvious right now, but in practice it'll look a little bit more like that, blend in really well. All right, and last but not least, crochet hack number 5. This is a way to create a more seamless join in the round. Now, this is another one that I saw on Instagram. I'll pop up with the account name on screen, but I'm gonna break it down a little bit more because I'm gonna show you how to do it with single crochet stitches, with double crochet stitches, and how to do it with double crochet stitches if you're using the alternative turning chain as your first stitch for the round. If we take a look at these two circles, you might notice that on the purple one here, the seam is pretty obvious. On the green one, if we look for it, we can find it here, but look at how much better that blends in. This is the way I would normally join rounds of single crochet. So I would have started the round off by chaining 1 and then single crocheting and doing my increases as normal. I've got 2 stitches left, so I put a single crochet into each of these stitches. And then the way I would normally join the round is I would go to the top of that first single crochet of the round, insert my hook through the top of that stitch front to back, so going through the fabric, yarn over and pull through everything on my hook, and then I like to cinch it down just to get a nice tight join so I don't have any gaps. That's the way I normally join rounds of single crochet. Honestly, it looks pretty good, but you do see this little bit of a line here where you see the seam. With the hack, that seam is a lot less visible. Let me show you how it's done. So I've got one last stitch. I'm going to work my single crochet into the last stitch of the round. And then I'm going to take my hook out of the loop. Now I personally like to pull this up a little bit so that way I don't accidentally unravel my project. So I'm going to take that out of there and I'm going to go to the first stitch of the round. So this guy right here is the first single crochet. And that V right there is the top of the stitch. I'm going to take my hook from the back to the front and go underneath both strands of the top of the stitch, so kind of that V shape. Now I worked this really tight because I wanted y'all to see the really good stitch definition so you really see the detail. So I had a little bit of a hard time getting it through there. It might be a little tricky, that's okay, just work it on through. And now that my hook is through from back to front on the project, I'm going to take my loop here and put it onto my hook. And I like to turn it so the hook is hooked that way, so that way I can catch the yarn really easily. If your loop is still really loose, you might want to pull it down just to make it easier. But I'm going to pull that loop through the crochet fabric to the back of the work. Now that I've got it through, I like to cinch this up nice and snug, so I'll start by pulling the loop, and that'll snug those stitches together, and then I'll size the loop back down. That's how we're going to work the join. Now to start working the round, it's going to be really similar to what we normally do. We're going to begin by chaining 1, and then the same spot where we just joined, I will put my first stitch into there, and then I will just work single crochet around, do my increases as appropriate. And when I get to the end of the round, I will join in the same way. So I want to take a moment and explain kind of how this hack works. What we're seeing here is that loop of where we do the slip stitch, and it's sitting on the front. So on the front we have the seam. From the back it blends in pretty good. Basically what we're doing with the hack is we're taking that loop of the seam, and instead of having it on the front, we're putting it on the back. So if you look on the back of this one is noticeable like the front of this one. The back of the non-hack version isn't visible like the front of the hack version. But again, just want to show the back sides as well. So if this is the side you want facing out, maybe you'd want to stick with the more traditional join. But if this is the side that you want facing out, this is a great option to really disguise that join. Now when I saw this hack, it got me wondering, does this also work with double crochet? I worked up a bunch of swatches for you guys, and I'm going to show you how it turns out with different processes with double crochet and kind of give you my thoughts on what I would do. So these two circles illustrate rounds of double crochet where I use a chain 2 turning chain, but I join in the top of the double crochet stitch. Now the left hand side, the seam's really not too visible. The right hand side, the seam is a bit visible. The left hand side is the traditional way of joining. So this is where when I start each round, I work 2 chain as a turning chain, do not count that as a stitch, then work my double crochet around as appropriate. When I join the round, I join like normal in the top of the double crochet stitch. So I'm not joining in the turning chain, I'm joining in the top of the double crochet stitch. Love the way this turns out. This here is how it looks with double crochet when we use the hack, where we take the hook out, go from back to front. Again, I'm joining the rounds in the top of the first double crochet of the round. I'm not joining in the chain 2 turning chain. Now, honestly, I don't think this is a terrible look. It does send those turning chains kind of to the back. You get a bit of a ridge on the back. But I just don't see this as an improvement over the normal join. So then I continued playing around and asked myself, what if we use the hack with the alternative turning chain instead of using the chain 2 turning chain? If you're not familiar with the alternative turning chain, I'm going to link to some other videos so you can go learn that. Absolutely my favorite crochet hack of all time, hands down. You definitely need to learn that hack. The left-hand side is using the alternative turning chain as the first stitch in the round, and then I join like normal in the top of the alternative turning chain. So I insert my hook from front to back, yarn over, and slip stitch to join the round. I think this seam blends in so nicely with the alternative turning chain. This is the alternative turning chain using the hack, where when we join each round, we go through the top of the alternative turning chain from back to front and then pull the loop through. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of it. I feel like I get some more gapping here. Again, the back gets a little bit of a ridge there. I just don't see this as an improvement over the normal join with double crochet. And to be completely honest, while we're on the topic of comparing joins, just so you can see this all in one video, I can never decide if I prefer the join of the alternative turning chain in the round or when I work a chain 2 turning chain but join in the top of the stitch. Either way, I feel like these are both phenomenal options. I feel like they blend in really well. So if I'm doing rounds of double crochet, I'm personally not going to use the hack, but I will absolutely use the hack if I'm working rounds of single crochet stitches. So there y'all have it. Those are 5 more crochet hacks that absolutely blew my mind, and I hope they are a game changer for your crocheting as well. Crochet hacks are one of those things I love about crochet because crochet is so basic in a sense that there's only a handful of stitches you really need to know, like single crochet, chain, double crochet, but it's all these little details and tips and tricks that can open up new worlds of crochet. And that's the beauty of crochet, is just when you think you've learned everything, there's always something new to learn. These are all ones that I discovered after my last hack video, and I only posted that about 2 years ago, so I'm constantly learning new things with crochet all the time. And of course, I love sharing these new things with y'all so you can benefit from them as well. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to support me, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, and share it with your crochet friends so we can all benefit from these hacks. I hope you all have an awesome week. Happy crafting! My name is Amanda, and I am back, bringing you all the crochet hacks. Crafters Autonomous is lots of fun, crocheting for everyone. Don't let me have a rap career. If I ever announce I'm going to have a rap career, please stop me. I'm trusting y'all to stop that from happening.